We've got a presentation tonight from one of CITPG's own, Lte Delanoy, who is an expert on unified communication. And so I will turn it over to him. Nate, the floor is yours. Give him a big hand.
Can you hear me? There we go. Yep. Going to do a little switcheroo here on laptops. And get us started. Hard act to follow. Diane did a great job singing as always, and real appreciative of all that she does for the group. It's great to have some entertainment and joy before getting onto this techie, geeky stuff. But what we're going to talk about tonight, some of you may be familiar with, others maybe not so much so. And then there's probably quite a few of you that fall in a group of, you may use this day to day, but don't realize, what the whole term of unified communications is, or UC as it's sometimes referred to. In reality, kind of UC or unified communication, really what you've got going on here is you've got a bundling of different services. Similar kind of, I guess you'd say, to several years ago. Now, I work as a product manager for a telecommunications company. And so anytime something new comes out, the CEOs and the business development team, they kind of come at me straight line and say, we got to have this. We got to get something rolled out. And you want to be first to market. And just like cloud computing is kind of, I guess, what unified communications, if I were to do some kind of parallel. Several years ago, you heard of everything about this cloud computing, and still even today, a lot of things, it's all pushed, this is cloud-based. And in reality, the whole scheme and thought of cloud has been around forever. So when my boss kind of came to me and said, we got to have some cloud applications, we got to put together a cloud solution, I kind of thought to myself and said, well, we're a telecommunications company, we're a telephone company. Everything's cloud, right? I mean, it's all the equipment we have, all the services we have are normally housed in a POP or a central office, and end users are connecting back and pulling up clients to allow for that cloud-based connectivity. What unified communications is it's integrating multiple modes of business communications tools kind of all under one umbrella. So a good way to think of it is many of you have a desk phone, and then say when you leave work at night, you go ahead and you may actually forward it onto your cell phone. That's unified communication. Really what you're doing there is you're using two separate tools to communicate for one common goal of providing a service to your end customer. Really, this has kind of evolved as a notion as far as what it covers. One of the first thing that comes to mind is call control or multi-module communication. So you have a phone number. That phone number may ring on a desk phone. Then you also may have it where it simultaneously rings a cell phone. It may actually sequentially ring to a home phone. And you may actually, what you're seeing a lot of now is what they call soft clients. And so that soft client may actually be just loaded where you almost have a virtual session of a phone on your PC or laptop. And then another thing that's kind of evolved is where you have these clients on your actual cell phones and on your tablets, whether it's Android-based, something like the Microsoft Surfaces back there, or Apple when it comes to the iPads. And what also is kind of pulling this together is what's known as presence. Presence being, and we'll show some different examples of all this as we kind of move along with the presentation. Presence being, I want to know where you are at all times is really what it comes down to. It can be, in a way, it's good for business, but then in another way, that whole thing of having some privacy is somewhat taken away, right? Because from a presence standpoint, you can usually you'll set it through an instant messenger or through phone, in which you'll go and say, I'm at lunch, or I'm out of the office, I'm on vacation. It's a way for others to see really what your status is from a availability standpoint. And then unified messaging. What unified messaging is many of you probably have the capability or want the capability to, let's say somebody leaves a voicemail on your desk phone, and you've got your cell phone, you're out to lunch. It comes in, that voicemail, as a WAV file through your email. That's what's unified messaging. Another thing that kind of correlates with unified messaging is a lot of businesses have fax machines that they've been trying to kind of get rid of for years and go into more of a mode where you're using scanners and printers. And what you can do with fax messaging is assign a number that virtually is a fax line number into a scanner, for instance. So I can have a fax messaging number. You can send me a fax electronically, and what it's going to do is it's going to come to this number that I have, and then I can choose to push it to a printer, or I can choose to pull it up as like a PDF or a TIFF file in my email. Speech, then that aspect of it is there's a lot of speech recognition programs out there. There's also a speech that comes inherently with IVRs, or what you think of as auto attendants. So you call into a business, or let's say, for instance, you're a bank, and you go ahead and say like what your routing number is, and it recognizes it. There's some different aspects there of tying that in under that unified communications umbrella. And then you have conferencing. So features like WebEx and GoToMeeting, in which you're using collaboration and able to recognize different people that are attending from their phone numbers and such. And then for collaboration tools, again, you have things out there. Level 3 has an offering. Microsoft has offerings. Really, a lot of the big boys from a software standpoint and from a telecommunications standpoint have their own variety or flavor of a collaboration tool. The main thing there when you think of collaboration is, let's say we're working on a document or a contract, and we've got several people that come together to view that contract and make comments, make edits, and they can do it in a real-time fashion, as opposed to I make a change and then I send it to someone via email and ask them to update it, or even kind of recently where I may hold the pen and I'm actually making a few changes, and then I have to hand the pen over to someone else in order to make changes to a document or program. And then you also have what's known as BPIs, which really are kind of like your, we've had recently come and present Microsoft Dynamics or Microsoft CRM. And you think of like Salesforce or ACT, some of these different databases that you have that interact through, for instance, a phone system. So let's say I'm calling a call center, and by my number, it's identifying who I am, pulling up certain information about me, or allowing me to then save that to a database as a record from a caller ID standpoint, and maybe some ticket information. I kind of like this graphic here, in which you're kind of seeing all the things that encompass unified communication, or UC. So you have some of the big players here, and as far as like Avaya, Cisco, Link, that you really, when you're thinking of unified communications, that fall under that umbrella. This has kind of become a big thing for not only service providers. So service providers are thinking of this as an offering that they can extend to customers. So it's a way that they can tie in software to your phone, whether you have your own on-premise PBX that's providing your voice functionality, or you're getting some hosted IP phones, or you may actually be using a solution like Microsoft with Link, or Google with Google Talk and Google Apps, in which what's interesting about it is you've got a lot of different players that used to be that aren't traditionally competitors, all vying for this piece of the pie. So you have, the service providers, and you have what's traditionally your software providers like Microsoft, Google, and then you have your PBX vendors, which would be like the Avaya, ShoreTel, all having kind of a stake in this, and really it's kind of in its infancy stage of what it'll turn into. And even like a traditional, like Polycom, you think of Polycom, you normally think of video conferencing, and you think of phones. What they've kind of worked on recently is really how do you tie this all together? How do you bring people together? How can they communicate more effectively? I recently went to Polycom has a large office in Atlanta, and I went there to kind of see some of the new things that they've got out. And you've probably seen some of the commercials where it's showing this presence aspect where you go into a special conference room and they have video screens that kind of circle their way around a room, and microphone drops and speaker drops, and really fancy, cool, neat. Some areas you go into, it looks like you're sitting at a table and the people are sitting right across from you when in reality they're in Tokyo. Real nice, but when I went there for a meeting, we're sitting in this conference room that I found out later cost $700,000, $800,000 to build, and if anything, it was more so a distraction, because what you had going on is I'm seeing people eat donuts, I'm seeing people walk away and using restrooms, so it's one of those things where how do you tie it together and how do you make video useful along with voice? You have to really be sharing information. And unified communication kind of brings that together through the collaboration piece. So we can bring up software. We can go over documents. You can do telemedicine where a doctor can use a camera and be hundreds of miles away and look at a patient and zoom in and make a diagnosis of a problem with a patient. And then so what do the users want and need? Really what users are looking for is a robust business communication capabilities, right? So they want something that's going to increase productivity and do it at as cost effective as possible. And most companies don't really want to outlay a lot of capital or cost up front in order to have a unique communication experience. They want to kind of have the best tools of the day, and 3 years from now, they don't want it to be dated. So they want something that's going to evolve. And really what you get with a unified communication solution that it's like a hosted or subscription base is a lot of those updates are applied regularly, so you're always kind of up front and to the latest with technology. And they want to make sure that they're making the right choice from a voice over IP standpoint, a video solution, and a unified communication piece. Most of the solutions out there right now, they fit certain unique customers. A lot of them act pretty much the same. There's certain ones that are differentiating themselves through cost, through capabilities, and we'll kind of go over that in just a minute here. They're also looking for solutions that are easy to deploy. So when you're going into an environment where a customer doesn't want to have to tear out like their traditional PBX, put in a whole new phone system, have to put in servers that have to be managed, databases that have to be kept up to date. They want something that can be put in and have a relatively seamless transition to this new technology, a new way of supporting communication needs. And of course, the main thing, they're looking to kind of increase productivity and increase the speed of business. So the main goal here is that I can find someone, I can get in touch with them, we can pull together in a group setting, and we can collaborate and come up with solutions that'll help different industries. When talking about unified communications or the UC stack, there's different components that make up unified communications. Contact center is a big one. So you have a lot of call centers, and when you think of a call center, the way that they work and interact has changed quite a bit over the last 5-6 years. Contact centers, when I thought of them, say 10 years ago, I started off in telecommunications working in a tech support environment. So, somebody would call in, take the call, I'd open up a separate database, try to resolve the issue. If not, make a note in a ticket and have them scheduled for a callback. but there was no real interaction with, if that user called in, I didn't know exactly which of maybe the 30 companies that we did tech support that they were calling in about. And also, when I opened up a ticket database, I could only really search like one field, which was a username. That if you didn't have your username, as you might have known, tech support, a lot of times, oh man, that's trouble. You can't really get anywhere. And there was no real way of kind of looking to see, all right, this user's called in 10 times in the same issue. Maybe I should try a different technique than the last 9 tries of what was done. So what you kind of have now with a lot of these contact centers is, let's say someone calls in, they'll get some different options. Some choose to where, just dials in and somebody can pick right up. And that's kind of the way that I prefer. I like somebody to answer my call as soon as I call right in. Others want to give you 100 choices and hopefully you select the right one. Hopefully you're not waiting very long, but if not, there's a lot of different options now to leave a message or to schedule a call back. But when you do talk to a technician, what will happen now is they usually will have like a screen pop that'll tell them, or a whisper in their ear that'll say, from your number you called in, some information that's relevant to you, relevant to your account. So through Unified Communications, what it's doing is it's making a correlation to, you're calling in on this trouble, this is who you are, this is your address. Now they might have to verify some different things there to make sure you're not trying to do some fraudulent things to account, but they should have a pretty good idea of who you are, how many times you've called in the past, what your trouble might be, and maybe also even diagnose from you've called in and we've already had 20 different people call from that area of town, so we know there's an issue. So what is hoped for there is a quicker resolution to your issue and a better response and a better customer experience. And that's kind of being accomplished by tying together phone numbers with database, and then also just more information at that technician's hands. And then another thing of the UC stack is the mobility feature, which is really unique and interesting that you're going to start seeing in the next couple of years here. Sprint just announced that what they have the capability to do now and what they're offering is you can have a number that is assigned to your cell phone that is the same number that you can have for an office line. So that's a little bit a different approach. Normally it's always kind of been, oh no, your cell phone number, that's cellular, your desk number or office number, totally separate. But what you're seeing now is, and a lot of this might have had to do with some of the changes in laws and regulations with porting goes. And what porting means is, let's say I'm business ABC, and I'm moving from Windstream to, I don't know, AT&T. And in order for me to keep my number, they actually transition that number from carrier to carrier. What you've never been able to do up until recently was say, I have a cell phone number. I started off my one-man business. It's grown to be a large business, and that's the number that everybody knows me by. Before it was like, well, too bad. That's a cellular number. That's where that stays. Now what you can actually do is take that number and port it over to, say, a business line. So there's some different aspects that are changing in the industry to support mobility. Another thing when you talk about mobility is the concept of find me, follow me, which is, again, if I'm not in the office, it's just going to go ahead and forward onto my cell phone. I can pick it up. I can also, a lot of the different solutions out there now, I can pull up and dial a special number, and then I can dial out and call you back, and the number that you see is my desk line number, even though I'm calling from my cell phone, which is kind of nice if you don't want to distribute your cell phone number. Another thing that's really kind of changed recently from the mobility aspect is there's a lot of different apps out there that are doing the soft client. And what that kind of does for you is, the way I've seen it as far as my company goes is, or the company I work for goes, is different businesses like, for instance, real estate. A lot of the real estate agents, a lot of environments, when you're expected to use your cell phone, you're reimbursed. But there's a lot of companies that don't reimburse people for cell phones, yet they find themselves using their cell phone for business purposes. with what's kind of been out there with these apps that are tied back to an office line is I can fire up this app. I can receive calls that are going to my office line number. I can make outbound calls. I can actually make video conference calls. And it's all actually being done on my data plan, not your cellular plan. So in that aspect, the customer end user isn't eating up their voice minutes. They're actually doing it over a data network. And then you have the enterprise or social networking aspect. It's kind of a small segment, but you can see it's increasing, and the projections have it going higher and higher. As you all might be aware of, I'm sure a majority of you are using like LinkedIn or using Facebook. Probably not many of you using MySpace anymore, but like what you can do with some of the social networking is they've made enhancements. And you look at something like Facebook or a company like Facebook. At first, they were trying to attract as many users as they can. And then they went public, and of course now the goal is going to be for them to make money. And so one way of them possibly making money is kind of what they're doing behind the scenes with this social networking aspect. If you tinker around with it a little bit, you can actually see who of your groups or friends are available online, talking now. You can send them a message. You can you'll soon be able to actually you may be able to do this now. I haven't checked recently. Just fire up a video one-on-one with them, and then what it'll evolve to is you'll be able to go into like a group setting and have a video conferencing between different friends or associates. What you'll also see with that is I think they'll have more of a business aspect of it where you'll have office lines, line numbers associated with that too, so you can easily click to dial one of your friends from one of these social medias or one of your connections. And then you have the integrated team collaboration. So, we're all working on a project. We all dial into a conference bridge. We may select from an instant messenger, hey, come in my group, come in my room, which is really just a focal point where everybody can kind of come in and work together on a project. I'm sorry, the gray there is the team collaboration. Then you have your video conferencing. Video conferencing, I've always been skeptical of it as far as how productive it is. It's always very cool from a technical standpoint. From a productivity standpoint, I don't know. Maybe it's because from a service provider standpoint, I've been burnt several times trying to offer one of these type of solutions. People think it's really cool and fun to look at when you show them it, but when you show them costs involved with it, it's hard to kind of sometimes justify the cost of video conferencing. But what's happening with video conferencing is the costs have been coming dramatically down. A lot of it's probably been fired up by Skype and some of these other free services out there where you can do point-to-point video calls. But really the power is in multi-point calls. So when you can start bringing on people in a multi-point environment and where you're using some of the new codecs that allow for more frames per second, better, higher resolution and HD quality, then it becomes more of a useful tool. In the past, 15 frames per second and bad video quality made it just kind of where not useful in practical settings such as education or e-medicine but as it improves, it's also getting cheaper. So you've got people that are able now to tie in from, say, a web camera into a traditional conference room setting. One of the things that Polycom announced about 6 months ago is interoperability, which is kind of a big thing for them to do because their niche and their bread and butter has always been these video conference centers that cost all this large amount of money. But what you're getting now is you're going to interop between these different vendors that will now say, okay, you can pull in somebody from Skype or you can pull in somebody from Google or Microsoft, and we can all talk together on this common unified communication tool, whereas in the past it was always proprietary. So you'd have to fire up a video conference session and then maybe have a separate phone conference call, and then you'd have maybe something else that like a Microsoft Link or whatever, or SharePoint, something where you're pulling up, you're actually collaborating. now through like Microsoft with Office 365, 2013, and these different tools, you can do all that under one umbrella. And then messaging, email, IM, unified messaging. Instant messaging obviously is nothing new. I mean, I used ICQ when I was in college, and Trillion and all that fun stuff. And I thought of it more of as a fun way to connect with my friends before cell phones really were popular and prevalent. But it is a unique tool and a great tool in a business application because you can share files, you can send video clips, you can then check present status to see who's available. So it's kind of really a functioning directory now for a business environment to collaborate with your coworkers and people outside your organization. And then IP telephony. IP telephony, or voice over IP, it's had its challenges, its hurdles, but it is kind of something that's here to stay. Most carriers have made transitions where using traditional or what's known as TDM has migrated to SIP or voice over IP. A lot of businesses have seen the financial benefits of moving to a voice over IP platform, whether it's premise-based through like a ShoreTel or Link or Avaya, or if it's a cloud-based using something like BroadSoft or Metaswitch. Voice over IP, what it allows you to do is kind of through an IP connectivity, see what's going on from a presence aspect. Just got this slide in here because it kind of breaks down some of the different functionalities, features of what makes up unified communications. Most of the things we've already kind of touched upon, but what's another thing that is the interoperability. So you're getting a lot of like where it'll sync up with Outlook. You get this click to dial type features, and actually you can kind of see right there. That's a real live pop-up that I've got coming in where someone's dialing a line of mine. They're actually doing some testing for a call center. And so I'm seeing that incoming message of what's coming up. I could have chose to answer there, or forward it to voicemail, or however I wanted to handle that call. But with the Outlook integration, you're getting a lot of like these toolbars that are built in where I can pull up a contact list and dial somebody directly from my contact list, or I can, when I have an inbound call, like for instance there, I could go ahead and save that to a V card where it'll actually pull in some of the caller ID information. When looking at where you have business voice, you're seeing too a lot now where customers, depending on how much knowledge they have in-house with IT, a lot of them are actually moving to these asterisks or tricks box solutions, which are really kind of cool. And it's great if you have people that are sharp enough to know how to work on them. You can really do some fancy and interesting things of tying that into software if you have that knowledge in-house. And really what it is it was kind of created in the open community, open source community, where different people said, I'm sick of paying this much amount of money to have these certain features from my phone service. And so through the open community, developed correlating or corresponding features that can be used through a PC that had just some special cards in the back to allow for voice capability. Any questions on this or what we're talking about so far? We're going to get into like some more demo aspects and actually showing some of the things that are being done from unified communications. Yeah. You get a lot of people that now it could be what's considered like a legacy PBX, right? So you might have like a Nortel Norstar, or you got some older legacy gear. What you're seeing a lot of people, or a lot of service providers do is they'll front end it with some features. So what they'll do is, let's say you've got a traditional PRI coming in with a list of 24 numbers, and you might have 40 DIDs or different numbers tying in. You can front end it with like IVRs. So if somebody wanted like an auto attendant type feature, you can tie that in, and you could give like a customer that capability to still access a portal remotely. Like for instance, let's say your business, hurricane goes through, knocks out everything, your PBX is offline. What they can still do in a lot of scenarios is if it's built with a virtual aspect up front is go through a web portal and manipulate how my numbers are handled. So let's say, for instance, your call center. You might go in from remotely through a web portal and choose to forward that over to, let's say, a backup call center you have at a different location. Or you may say, okay, I want this instead to forward to these folks' cell phones. So you see a lot of that where you're actually front-ending it with software now, even though you have a traditional PBX. And it's a good solution for a lot of people because a lot of people, some of these PBXs, 15, even up to a couple years ago, tens of thousands of dollars. You know, they're expensive, and a lot of them that are out there are even. There's still a lot of PBX vendors out there. A lot of them do a great job. I'm not saying by any means that a hosted solution is the way for everybody. Like ShoreTel, they've got great solution. Avaya, a lot of the vendors that are around right now still have great solutions that are feature rich from a premise-based PBX standpoint. Any other questions? Okay. Well, then I guess we'll break for about. Sorry. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
This interface without getting too serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's you're seeing a lot of in actual. What we plan on. One of my roles with CITPG is to line up some of the presenters, and we actually got IBM will be coming in a few weeks from now. I'd say a few months from now. They're coming. You'll see some of that stuff on the calendar within the next 2-3 weeks. But IBM is going to come in and talk about some of the things they're doing from a cloud perspective, and then also from a communications perspective. So it should be interesting. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll take a break for about 15 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll do some live demo stuff. Thanks. Show a few things that we were talking about a little bit here. Now, what I'm showing, it's from the BroadSoft platform. You can do a lot of this with other software too. This isn't specific to a certain platform. There's some others that actually have other bells and whistles that are really great. And then you have some things that this can do that maybe some other platforms are lacking. But what I think is really one of the coolest things about the unified communication is pulling together these different technologies and meshing them together instead of so frustrating when you have to have 6 different apps open. You got a line for this, a line for that, a cell phone, a home phone. You got all this stuff where it's just, I like things to be clean and pulled together. And that's really kind of what unified communication is trying to do. And you think of the days when you think of people that had like mobile devices a long time ago. You got a briefcase, right, that you put in your car. And laptop was really in the infancy stage and was, a brick this thick and the size of a suitcase. And now you kind of look over here what Microsoft has set up, right, with these Surface Pros. I mean, a lightweight device that you could have a soft client on for a phone. You can have access to all your Office apps, web browser, cameras built in. It's just amazing how much technology's really picked up. And I'd say really in like the last 5 years, it's just escalated so much. And I remember when it was really cool to have an iPhone. And I don't feel that cool anymore for having an iPhone. There's a lot of other options out there, right? You have the Galaxies. Microsoft has a really awesome phone. BlackBerry's kind of making a little bit of a comeback. I don't know. But the thing is if you asked me 3 years ago, was there anything that could touch an iPhone? I said, no, there's nothing that can touch it. It's great. Wonderful phone. Great piece of hardware. Still is a good piece of hardware, but competitors have caught up. Innovation has taken place. And if you stand still too long, you kind of get left in the dust. And that's what's kind of neat about telecommunications as well as software, is that constantly evolving, new innovations, things you never thought of or even think about are happening on a day-to-day basis. One aspect of unified communications that we talked about, unified messaging. So actually, Kevin York, who's in the back here, he called me earlier when I was driving down, or driving up, I should say. I was working in Columbia today and driving up for a presentation tonight. So he called and he actually left me a message. And as you can see, I won't play back his message because I'm not even sure what the actual content is. But it comes in a WAV file format, lets me know his number, who it's from, and I can go ahead and play that. So and I have a record of that on my email client, and then also, of course, on my cell phone for my email. So it's a nice functionality to have. And what you get a lot of right now are like these toolbar type integrations. To be obvious, or to be, I don't know, clear on it, toolbars I usually despise. I usually don't like toolbars very much. But when they're actually able to give you some functionality, I do like that. Now, if you ask me about the Ask toolbar, I'll probably give you a different reply. But some toolbars are good to have. So for like some of these toolbars that you can have instant click to dial, check voicemail. I can change my forwarding options. If I want to forward always to a certain one, I can look and see actually speed dial listings. I can pull up my contacts, and I can do different things like pull up different options on, like for instance, remote office. So I click this, I can pull up all these different things. And again, you're going to get this same type of functionality, whether you're using like a Link or ShoreTel or even Google Talk, where you can then manipulate and say, hey, put me on Do Not Disturb mode, or change my actual caller ID. A lot of these things, if you want to make these types of changes in a traditional environment, 10 years ago, you'd make a call to someone that would then give you a 5-day window of when that change would take place and charge you $85. Now it's a thing where you, as the end user, have control of how those lines are manipulated, how you want them to react, who you want them to dial, it's nice to have that control. So I thought I'd just kind of show you how that all works. You can actually put in numbers, do click to dial, and go ahead and dial folks. So if I dial this and put in my cell phone number and hit enter, it's going ahead and calling my cell phone. So my office line right now is calling. Oh, there it is. Calling my cell phone. Now if I answer it, my desk phone actually is in Columbia, so you're not going to hear it from here. But I brought this phone just kind of as a visual. I realize we don't really have a Cat 5 drop up here, so I can't show you a whole lot there from how you can get them to interact in manipulation aspect. When we look at the aspect of unified communications that's collaboration, when you're looking at collaboration tools, what's really nice is now you can do a lot of things where you preload your slides, you're doing the sharing, you're granting control to other people, enabling webcams so you can see, who's in your meeting and whether or not they're actually paying attention or playing solitaire or whatever. And then the capability for them to raise their hand and ask questions without actually interrupting your meeting by chiming in. You can choose to mute out folks, share certain applications, even hand over your desktop for someone else to take control, or you may even choose to actually transfer the conference controls over to someone else that's a participant in the meeting. So it's gone a long way since the early days of GoToMeeting or WebEx. They've all kind of, that's what's good about competition, is you get everybody kind of challenges themselves, right? And when they challenge each other, you get innovation, you get new products, you get new offerings, and hopefully at a lower price. Let's see here. Another aspect of things that just kind of have evolved with unified communications when I think about phones, a lot of times, again, I work for a phone company, so we'll go into different customers that may have been customers of ours for years, and they decide they want to make a phone system upgrade or change out. They would have, you look at the size of this, not a very big phone, right? But you can actually control like 14 different lines with that. Or you can have it where it comes up in a receptionist manner where you see it on a screen and you can manipulate the calls coming in from receptionist fashion through that interface. Whereas before, what you'd see is, it was the craziest thing ever. You go on a desk that's this long, you'd have these side carts stacked on each other that would hang over the edge of the desk. I mean, they just go forever long. Now it's just a more precise and better way of handling all these different lines that may be at business. We'll go back right now just to the presentation for a minute, and then we can break out of it too. And if anybody has any questions as well, just chime in at any time. I've got no problem with entertaining some questions while we're moving along. Yeah. Hey, Gary. Yeah, well, actually, it was kind of wild. Oh, boy, I'll tell you. What's kind of strange is some of the stuff that I do from a telecommunications standpoint is respond to requests for subpoenas and things, the traditional manner that you would think it would be handled, where normally if I ever got a call from somebody that was from that claimed to be from a legal agency or FBI or whatever, they kind of know the protocol and would say, who do I send in the subpoena request to, and do it that way. If somebody calls in, a lot of times it would say, hey, let me get access to this person's phone line or da-da-da-da, then hands off unless you've got a subpoena. I'm not giving you anything. But what's kind of unusual that happened in telecommunications several years ago is there's something called CALEA compliancy. And it's also known as Lawful Intercept. And it used to be done in a traditional manner for voice service where you had to be compliant, where really government agencies and such would have the capability to make requests on certain users, and then you'd have to respond accordingly to give them the kind of access they needed. What's strange is it's about 3 years ago that all the different internet providers out there had to be CALEA compliant. And if you weren't, you get these fines where they would say, they'd give you an IP address, or they would tell you so-and-so had this IP address at this time. If you couldn't identify who that user is and give them information on that user, you'd face a penalty of $30,000. So it's a stiff penalty, especially there's actually, believe it or not, a lot of different service providers out there that are in rural, like West Virginia, that they may only have like 300, 400 customers. So $30,000 to them is putting them out of business. And actually, the cost and hardware for them to be that CALEA compliant was, a lot of them had to spend $20,000 on infrastructure plus in order to have that compliancy. What I'm getting at, though, is that some of you may have been aware of like a program called Carnivore years ago, in which there was a lot of capability for certain government agencies to do some things to find the bad guys. And what they do nowadays, I have no idea. But I know that we follow the guidelines. Now, a lot of guys in the audience, I know you know what they do. But one of the things that you have to do to cover yourself is there's a lot of call recording capabilities now with some of these new systems. Like, for instance, this phone itself, right? It has USB ports on it. I can actually plug in a USB drive, and while we're on a call, all I got to do is hit a little soft key here on the touchscreen and choose to record our call. Now, I normally do things or work in South Carolina. There, only one party has to be aware that you're recording a call. I always thought North Carolina was both parties, but then I was told recently that no, in fact, it's only one party as well. So that's one of the things with some of this evolution of technology that's a little sketchy. Before, you really wouldn't find that as prevalent as you can today, where they can just record all your calls. Yeah, I'm the calling party. I'm the guy wanting to get it on you. Yeah. Yeah. Oop. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What is being recorded? I mean, obviously, I guess if you're seeing it, then...
Oh, from a recording standpoint, though, what you really have got there is that's done by the end users. And generally, by the end user is generally who's doing the recording now. From a service provider standpoint, I'm only recording it if you're requesting it as a customer. What we I really don't know what they would do with that information. I don't know. Yeah, I'm on stage. I don't want to say anything. I hear. Go ahead.
Are any of these phones voice over IP providing encryption? Or are you generally relying on
Encrypting the link, which is kind of crazy because even when I've seen it, all you really have to do, it's the strangest thing in the world is put a Wireshark or a Ethereal, just do a sniff on the back end, and I can actually play back your call. So if I'm in line in your network, so if I somehow am, say, plugged into your switch or plugged in between your phone and your switch, I could do a capture and, play back your whole conversation. The phones that I play with, to avoid that, I think ShoreTel's doing some creative things with encryption with phones. But natively, it's an RTP stream, so it's, you've got a way to actually kind of put it together and play back the voice if you want to. Okay, go ahead. Different platforms do have that capability. The majority, though, believe it or not, have it where all you have to do is you go into the phone, and they usually have a VLAN tag that's tied to a voice VLAN. So if it's on a customer's network and the service provider has control of the circuit, they'll put it on a particular voice VLAN, and so it's only, it's being handled with quality of service to say, I want my voice traffic to have a higher priority than somebody surfing YouTube or something like that. But what normally you can do is take that VLAN tag off and take the phone and plug it in anywhere. Go home. And that's one of the things, some people see a benefit to that. Like, say you have a worker that you depend on that's on maternity leave. What a lot of times they'll do nowadays, it's crazy, is they'll unplug the phone, they'll take the VLAN tag off, unplug the phone, and let them bring it home, plug it in, and it's as if they're in the office. So there are, for those that have the security need, there are some separate pieces of hardware. They're about the size of like a laptop that are like a VPN concentrator, if you wanted to do that. But, okay, well, we'll move on, and then if anybody has some questions along the way, just go ahead and shout them out, and we'll talk about them. Oop, didn't mean to go that fast. Here we go. Again, when you're looking at like the current economic environment, again, most things when it comes right down to it is the cost, right? So cost and benefit. So there's demand for reduced cost when you're looking from the economic standpoint it's driving UC. And then lack of capital or access to capital. To be honest, a lot of customers might feel discouraged about, the model before was, hey, you go out and you buy this. Hey, it's only $30,000, $40,000 for this PBX, and then you go and buy these servers and this software. And you have this huge capital outlay for supporting some of your needs, where in today's environment with a lot that's going on with cloud computing, it's more of a subscription basis. And even you see a lot of things with Microsoft even, right, where you've got like 365, right? So you've got this monthly model where you're paying a certain fee, you're getting the latest and greatest in technology. The benefit to that, too, is you're always on top of some of the current releases. The one problem is you might not have as much control that you would have if it was on-premise for you. Increased mobility in the workforce. It's one of those things where everyone loves their cell phone, but I think I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to hate my cell phone. It's one of those things that it's just seen now, and I think it's almost accepted that if it's 9 o'clock at night and you call my cell phone, then I'm going to pick up and we're going to be able to talk about work. It's not a thing of a 9 to 5 anymore with this whole mobility aspect. So that's kind of the discouraging aspect of some of these technology enhancements is you're always available to some people, right? And privacy is sometimes ignored. With that being said, from a work standpoint, more productivity, right? Always available. Managing technology and change and risk, or managing technology change and risk. So, when you're have this increase in some of the capabilities of certain platforms, if you're in a model where you're subscription based, you're kind of always seeing some of those benefits. Well, I say you're always seeing. You got to look at kind of your vulnerabilities from a security standpoint too. As we talked about, you could easily put like a Ethereal or Wireshark trace, and I can play back a phone call. So there's definitely some concerns from a security standpoint. But you're seeing a lot of real growth in this hosted and cloud-based model, and that's able to kind of flourish and build up this unified communications capability. When you think of unified communication, too, again, you're thinking of instant message and presence. You're thinking of mobility, video, conferencing, call center, web collaboration. But you're able to integrate in all this new fun technology, whether it's a fixed phone or mobile or laptop, tablets. What they're saying as far as personal systems, where you might have a dedicated screen for video conferencing at your desk, and room systems. When you're looking at like the tools of unified communication, we kind of went over this on the last slide. But these instant message sessions now, a lot of times you'll see. I know, like in a lot of workplaces, people are updating like their picture profiles for their instant message on like a daily basis and such. And you'll see, green usually means you're available, you're ready to go, you're ready to take calls, you're ready to work. Red being unavailable. So a lot of them are going with those color codes when it comes to the instant message platform. When you're looking at like the market leaders, you've got like the Avaya, ShoreTel, Microsoft, Google, Verizon. Not too long ago acquired Terramark, which is really kind of doing some cool, innovative things. There's a company called 8x8. They're out West Coast, and they're kind of doing some really neat things with tying in software with phone applications. Of course, Cisco. I haven't really talked about them too much, but they've got some really nice solutions with their call manager, tying with unified communications. ShoreTel, I don't know how many of you know that like CNP that's based out of Charlotte, they're the largest ShoreTel dealer, I believe, in the country. And they're based right out here in Charlotte, which is kind of cool. Pantera, they're doing some really neat things as well as Zaos, but what you're kind of seeing is some of these innovators that are doing unique things, they get to a certain size and then they're kind of gobbled up by the big boys. So I wouldn't doubt it if you see them kind of fall under some of the larger companies here shortly. For all those people that are in like a business development type solution, people love these quadrants. But so the Gartner quadrant as far as unified communications. And what you kind of see is who are considered the leaders, who are the challengers, who have the ability to execute. Microsoft on top, doing a great job with it. And you have ShoreTel, Verizon's doing quite well. Mitel's they've fallen behind a little bit. AT&T, they're not being real aggressive with their solution right now. Microsoft, from a software standpoint, has got a great solution. Some of the things that I think they're working on and getting better at are the voice aspects of Link. There's some challenges there. They're doing a good job with it. The call center aspects they're building that part of it up too. A lot of times they work together and partner together, but not. On that slide, no, they would actually be. I'm not sure why I don't see a VIA on there, which is kind of crazy to me. Although I don't see BroadSoft on there either, which I think BroadSoft's got a pretty good solution, but it's relatively new. Where would I put a VIA? I'd say a VIA is probably, they got to be right in here with it. I know the company that I work for, we have, from a soft switch standpoint, we actually, I don't know, we can't make up our minds. So the 3 leaders, we kind of got one of each. So we got a VIA platform, and then we've got a meta switch, and then we've got a BroadSoft switch. Now, from a UC standpoint, I like the BroadSoft a little bit better, but from like a call center perspective, a VIA is like superior to the 3 of them. And then from a cost perspective, meta switch is pretty good. But, and those are for hosted VoIP switches. But it's kind of funny when you look at like the leaders, though, right? It's kind of a Me Too thing at this point. When you really look, is there really a huge difference when you look at Link compared to Google Talk, compared to Cisco's solution, compared to, say, like BroadSoft over here? They all kind of have a similar look and feel, right? And as soon as one kind of does something, there's a little catch-up, and the rest are kind of doing it as well. But what is nice about the way that instant message clients have evolved is it used to just be a thing of you'd put up a note, hey, I'm gone to the break room, or I'm going, I'll be back in 10 minutes. I've gone to grab a slice of pizza. Now they kind of have these predefined statuses for you to put up. And not only are you just typing back and forth to friends or group of friends, but then they have the ability to click on you and then choose to chat or call you or strike up a video conversation or, hey, come on into my group, and you hop into a group and collaborate together. So it's an evolution. What's next? I'm not sure as far as what they can do with that. And when looking at the driving force behind any evolution or anything new with unified communication, it's all based around collaboration. So getting groups to work together, come up with better solutions, whether it's contact center, telepresence. I don't want to beat these to death. We've kind of talked about them, but here they are. When you're thinking of web collaboration, it's kind of funny because most of these web collaboration tools, they'll have like an eco meter or a green meter in which they're trying to say, wow, look at the wonderful things you're doing for the environment when you're not in your car driving to get to a conference. So what it's trying to tally up there is as far as gallons of gas that you saved from the amount of minutes you've spent on these web collaboration tools. But most of them now have a video component. Used to kind of be more so you had some, you want to show a PowerPoint to somebody across the country. Now it's more so sharing multiple applications, sharing slideshows, allowing interaction during the collaboration session. And it used to kind of be more so collaboration was something that evolved from web conferences that usually had a predetermined time. You sent out a bridge, people dialed in separately, brought up a video session, whereas now it's kind of more so seen as a tool that you may bring up on a whim. Not a thing of, hey, at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, we're going to talk about this, everybody dial in. Now it's just kind of a thing of, hey, if you're available, come on, let's join and let's collaborate. And just kind of looking at like a typical, I've got this little bit dated slide, but like Link, Server 2010, how you can tie it together using Office 365, 2013, 2010. There's a lot of different phone sets that work great with the Link solution. Generally, what you do in these scenarios, if you have something like Link, is you've got SIP trunks that you're getting from your carrier. Generally, for a SIP trunk, you're paying somewhere between $10 and $12 per SIP trunk, getting a couple hundred long-distance minutes per trunk. Then all the feature capabilities, all the functionalities being serviced by Link. Now, there are quite a few different servers that would support, depending on how how large of a build you do of a link solution. But what's kind of cool now is that with the Office 365, a lot of that can be handled in the cloud, so you don't really, have this. You're inundated with all these servers or virtual sessions because you can actually do it through a cloud environment with Microsoft 365. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a question. Yeah, okay. Sure. True, you're right. I'm sorry. I should have probably been a little bit more detailed in that. Right. You can do some of the collaborations, the instant messaging capability. The voice side, yeah, you're right. You cannot do natively out of the box. You have experience with that? So in that instance, though, so you're using a third party for, how are you doing the voice, just out of curiosity? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I got you. Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I think, as that kind of evolves, I imagine they're going to work out some of those kinks. From my standpoint, something like a link is somewhat, it's seen as, okay, a correlation, right? Because I can still sell you SIP trunks. But I'm losing probably a lot of possible revenue from I can't provide you some of these other services that were money makers for me. There's been a real push for, seems like a lot of Fortune 500 type companies have made the move over to Link. I happen to actually be flying out to Phoenix for a BroadSoft conference and was sitting next to a guy that did procurement for, who am I trying to think of that he did it for? Honeywell. And he told me that they were making a full integration of Link, and I thought, gosh, how can a company, that large, that has probably so many different ways that they handle their calls, make a full transition over to it? But if you've got the servers in your closet and the manpower to support it, you can make those type of transitions. Just kind of want to show kind of way things. That's the slide actually I grabbed from Polycom, in which talked about conferencing calls were kind of the traditional way back in '92. Then you had your video conferencing. Then you got the whole telepresence, which is a cool factor. How useful, I don't know. And then you have really kind of what I think is neat is how you got the mobile integration now. So people think of like FaceTime. But there's a lot of actual software out there right now that'll tie in so you can have a video type call with multiple end users and tie it together pretty seamlessly. And just kind of like how they do it from a hosted model, the way that it's normally done as far as an integration goes is you've got some of the instant messaging and presence capability are either done by the underlying switch provider, which in this case got BroadSoft. It would be similar to if you had a VIA type solution or say a Metaswitch. You've got the public internet, you have the customer enterprise network, and then the service provider network. Eventually, you'll see some of this move from the underlying switch provider, and it'll be moved over to the service provider's network. But right now, the way this is done is it's tied in through going over the public internet and then getting back to the service provider network where you have the actual voice switch. And then from the enterprise network, you've got Wi-Fi and the tablets that are then interfacing for that instant message and presence capability. And then you have your Wi-Fi or mobile clients for end users that are out in the field. One thing that's really interesting that kind of working on right now, that there's a lot of new innovations taking place because of what's happening with 4G and LTE rollout. A challenge before is that 3G, when that came out, that was kind of cool. You can maybe use that for backup internet. Couldn't really do too much more with it. Scary thing for me, but good for end customers, is 4G and LTE. You get much higher speeds, much cheaper cost than some traditional means, say of normally maybe I'd have to deliver you fiber, which you kind of have some high costs for build out. But you can get these good speeds from a 4G or LTE connection. And now what they're able to do actually is quality of service over that as well. So with quality service, you can actually have, like a voice over IP type setting going back to a little device that you've got, whether it's a cradle point or something that Ericsson creates that talks back to a tower. And so really what you've kind of done is cut the line, right? You're in an instance there where you're doing it over 4G or LTE. There was a real security concern, I think, in a lot of people's mind when it came to 4G and LTE. But a lot of that actually was put aside when Hurricane Sandy hit New York City. And there's probably people in this audience that maybe work for Wells Fargo or Bank of America that could kind of talk more about this than I can. But some of my friends that work for both companies said that was really kind of the point where they decided, okay, we're going to rely on 4G or LTE. And so it's, when you have the hurricane goes through, everything's flooded out, lose power in certain scenarios, of course, your internet, voice, data goes down. What they did is fouled over to 4G or LTE, and were able to kind of get some of those business crucial connections back up online. And since then, what you're seeing is a lot of ATM machines that traditionally had T1s or fractional T1s to supply data connectivity back are now actually being done over a 4G connection. So it's interesting to see how that will all evolve, whether or not you'll be ordering your internet for your home through a wireless carrier or still having to go through the cable or phone company. I can't say I know a whole lot about the ShoreTel system other than I've had a chance to play with them a little bit, and they are good, solid solutions. But their normal deployment of what kind of found through ShoreTel's site is you've got like a headquarters branch. You're going through IP WAN, which I imagine could be MPLS, VPLS, probably not over the open internet too much. It's going to be over a secure network. And then you have your different branch offices. And the voice switches are talking back to the PSTN or the carrier's network to get the dial tone. One thing I really do like about the ShoreTels that what I've read up about them and seen through some of the demos is they're really conscious about the security aspect, which I think a lot of times in voice over IP settings is overlooked. Graphic here just kind of saying how it all ties together, right? You've got voice, data, mobility, directory service presence, email, video, all kind of coming together under one umbrella. And believe me, there's a lot of people, whether it's a service provider or software, that wants your business, and they want to get as much as they can. Kind of the whole thought there is the more that they can offer you as a service, the stickier they are with you, the less possible it is for them to move away from their services from you. Or you're to move your service away from them. Just kind of a breakdown of really kind of who has the market share to some degree of the UC as a service. The way it's kind of broken down here, though, it does look like it's missing a few key players, but I did pull this from Synergy Research Group. And then kind of some of what's driving the need for unified communications. You've got unified messaging. Again, most companies have moved to this where they're doing something with unified messaging, right? Where it's voicemail to email, or it's the capability to dial in from a different line number to check my voicemail, or whether it's taking what was traditionally a fax line and having to pay for a copper line, you're now moving it to this virtual session for an IP fax line. And then you have the folks that are looking to have that experience with mobility, video conferencing, web conferencing, presence, instant messaging. It's kind of just a survey that was done to see what the interest was out there for people that are looking at unified communications, who's made different moves when looking at unified communications, and those that aren't really interested at all. Usually, most companies have somewhat of an interest because they see an efficiency aspect to it. But where you see is there's been a lot, and again, the data is for 2012. 2013 data really isn't out there yet, but those that have implemented have increased a decent amount, and there are some folks that are piloting it. Oops, sorry about that. Is there many, just out of curiosity, out of the audience here too, are many of you using like a soft client at all, as far as actually firing, instead of having a traditional phone at your desk, that you're actually doing it through your laptop or a PC? I know a lot of call centers are doing that right now, but is there many of y'all, just out of raise a hand as a curiosity, that are doing it that way? Okay. Yeah, and I kind of noticed some of the real tech-savvy guys are doing it. And what's that? That's one aspect of it. Then another thing that I've always had from a problem is sometimes you'll have, depending on your setup, you probably want some way of having a mic and a speaker. If you're doing it over the traditional mic and speaker on a laptop, you're going to run into some echo issues there too, and they'll hear some keystrokes. But there's actually a lot of call centers that's becoming a common solution now, where they'll have USB headsets plugged in, and they'll have everything else is really a virtual phone. So you've got your dial pad, you've got your contact list, you've got your database entry. It's all on a screen in front of you, as opposed to leaning over and answering the phone or taking it off hook. And then you've kind of got that hybrid solution again, and I'll just bring that up, where you're, for instance, doing something where you're dialing out, it actually takes your phone into a speakerphone mode, or if you got a headset on, it'll actually put it where you get dial tone in your headset, and you've got your number, you dial in, you actually haven't actually touched your phone set at all. I imagine that's kind of the way that things are going to evolve, is that in the workplace you'll probably have more sessions where it's tied to a screen and keystrokes, as opposed to have an actual physical phone. And that's one of the things that was kind of interesting, is Polycom launched this. It's kind of cool. They've got this video camera that actually just plugs in via USB into these phones. And these cameras, I mean, these phones you can use them on any of the platforms that are out there that are voice over IP. This is SIP-based. But these cameras are like $100, $100, $120. You plug them in, and then it allows for video calls to be made between two different endpoints. Or actually even to it has interop, where you can actually have it interface with, say, somebody that's got a Bria soft client on their laptop for a video session. But the thing is that we keep hearing over and over again is if let's say I'm collaborating with somebody and I've got my phone going, my phone generally isn't kind of like how your webcam is, right? Where your webcam is getting a direct shot of you. Your phone's off to the side, getting a side profile of you. So is that really that useful? I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. We're going to start selling these in a month. But the thing is that I really kind of see that really a more useful thing is a webcam, right? Something where you've got a direct scenario looking in, or something that gives you more of a wide angle approach so you can see more. So we'll see how successful they are with this. But you're seeing that more commonplace of these camera integrations with the phones. But the more and more you look at some of the way these phones are coming out with the touch screens, they're trying to play a little bit of a catch-up and copycat of what you get from functionality from your cell phone. I think they'll still be around 10 years from now, but 15 years from now, it might be obsolete. We'll see. This one does. It's got the screen actually is probably a little bit smaller than, say, your traditional iPhone does. Now, they have some different models. They have other ones where they're larger, extends across. What is nice, I can choose multiple different lines to dial out from, answer my coworkers' lines, things like that. Something that was really neat that I saw, went to the Cloud Expo show up in New York a couple weeks ago, and you got some people there that are doing some pretty innovative things. And one thing that I always thought, man, why hasn't somebody done this yet? Motorola kind of did this a few years ago, where they had this phone that you'd go to like your workplace or wherever, and you'd dock it, and then you'd have this keyboard and a monitor, and you're almost using this as like your one device, right? So this is actually acting as holding all your documents and things like that. So I thought that was pretty cool when Motorola was doing it, but then it just seemed to fizzle out, didn't get a whole lot of traction. One thing that's really neat that I saw, it was like a single-man shop. I was like, geez, I'm surprised others haven't done this yet. But it had a docking station, so where you traditionally would have a phone, you plug this thing in, and then it talks Bluetooth back to your PC, which is really just a dumb station. It has all your documents. All the processing is actually coming from the phone. Not as I say Bluetooth, it actually had a connectivity back to via USB to the laptop. But it was kind of moving more to the model that you just have that one device. So then I leave work, I undock, I bring it with me, I come back to work, I push this down. He had 3 screens, HDMI output. You could make calls out from the microphones that were built into the laptop. Just thought it was kind of a neat concept of one device. I kind of wonder if that's kind of where we're headed. I don't know. Any questions right now, too? I get a lot of junk. I don't know. I probably should look at those every once in a while, but I haven't. And I probably should create an archive here sometime soon, but I've been lacking on that a little bit. Out of curiosity, too, from a link, are there many people here that I know the gentleman in the back he actually deploys Link quite a bit. Are there a lot of Link users here right now? Okay, cool. Just curious on that. Are there many that are doing something from like a hosted environment for voice over IP too? Just out of curiosity? Not many. Interesting. One more question actually on that. Are there many that are using like Google Talk actually with Google Business apps? I was just curious how much that was kind of rolling out there right now. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's Hangout. I was going to say this right. You hear of the Hangout aspect. That's correct. Just to kind of show you something, too, from these, a lot of the PBX vendors and what you have, too, from a cloud environment, what they normally have is kind of like some aspect where you can pull it up from a web portal. So whether it's a local private IP address or if it's a public address that you reach and put in a login, you can manipulate the lines and such from there. So, for instance, I just kind of logged into my own office line. And from, let me go back in. Sorry, timed out. You can do so many things with your actual line now, right? Where you can set up rules as far as how you want to have certain calls handled. You may want to have like a sequential ring where you're dialing home phone, mountain house, your mountain cabin, a cell phone. You can set many different lines and how you want them to ring sequentially from somebody dials, say, your office line. You can do a lot of different things with selective rejection. So, you've got a mother-in-law calling in. You want to reject that as soon as it comes in. You can turn that on. Just from a messaging standpoint, I wanted to show this as well, like fax messaging. A lot of times with this fax messaging, what you do is you can actually manipulate it from your one line. So I can log into one voicemail portal, and I can say, all right, it says I've received one new fax message. And then from my controls on my phone, choose to forward it over to a local fax machine. And a lot of them have an Outlook integration, whether it is the Microsoft solution or a different third party where you can do some click to dial from your contact list from Outlook. And actually, during the break, I was talking a little bit about whenever any have ideas or know of a speaker that you want to present at some time at CITPG, just send me an email or grab me and say, hey, I know somebody great to be a good fit. But one of the suggestions was someone that's local here, but really a worldwide company, is Muzak. And a lot of these solutions, you go to certain customers for on-hold music, they're using a service like Muzak. Muzak traditionally had, they had some services where it was like a tape that played. Then they had where you contacted a server and they had just different audio feeds. But most of these services have a way where you can easily plug into a service like Muzak. And hopefully we'll get somebody from Muzak to actually come out here at some point and talk to us about what they do and their local footprint here in the Carolinas as well. And you can do your speed dial configurations, all that good stuff. One thing that I was hoping to show you, but I couldn't quite. I got one of these dongles, and I was going to bring my iPad, but tried it with my phone instead, and wasn't having the best of luck. But showing you kind of the soft client and how that all works and integrates and can be used alongside a business line. The apps, the soft client apps, they're pretty cool. The only problem is they're really a battery killer when it comes to an app for your cell phone, or at least the ones that I've experienced, in which pretty much everyone seems to be rebranding Counterpath or Bria for the most part for these soft client solutions. Let's see here. I was going to bring something else up, but I'm trying to think if I can actually connect to it from here. One of the things I want to make you all aware of, too, for upcoming meetings, for the most part, I think, is there any questions about unified communications? Any additional questions? Want to make you aware before we start giving away our prizes and such, who we do have lined up for future presenters here coming up in the next few months. You'll see an update on the website, but we've got it's kind of some cool, exciting folks that haven't presented to us before or that haven't presented in a while. That'll be what the goal is here is by the end of the month to have the next 5 months of presenters lined up. Who's going to come and talk to us, though, is, gosh, somebody's probably going to throw a brick at me for pronouncing it wrong, but SUSE or Linux, we had Red Hat come in here, that was probably 9 months ago, but is it SUSE? Is that how you say it? Does anyone want to correct me? But SUSE, they're coming in to talk with us, as well as Rackspace is also planning to come and talk with us. IBM's coming to see us again. From the audience, we had someone suggest, and I think it's a great idea, a little bit different for us, but we'll have 3-do systems. I'll see if I can grab somebody from there. I know my cousin actually has somebody that knows somebody that works over there, but they do 3D printing, which is kind of a pretty cool and relevant new technology that see if they can come and maybe give us some demos of how that all works. As well as Oracle will plan on talking to us, and Citrix. So kind of excited about that. I had some people sent out some email requests about having VMware come back and talk to us. They're interested in doing that as well, so try to get that stacked in there as well. But finished a little bit early, but I do appreciate questions and your attention. And I think the company I work for, they brought a gift basket thing too that we can give away tonight as well.